For most of my childhood, I had two mothers. My own, a brisk, loving woman who ran a tight ship, and Aunt Celia, her sister, who was the ship's beautiful, mysterious figurehead. Celia lived alone in a craftsman bungalow 2 streets over, a house that smelled of sandalwood and secrets. Where our home was all cheer and schedules, Celia's was a museum of curiosities, tinkling wind chimes, velvet drapes, a closet full of costumes she'd let me play dress-up in. She was my sanctuary, my co-conspirator. She remembered my favorite ice cream flavor before I did, knew I hated the texture of wool socks, and could always produce the exact sticker or trinket I'd been coveting. "You're my special boy," she'd whisper, smoothing my hair. "My little reflection." I'd beam. It felt like being chosen. The first crack in the glass appeared when I was 12. I was at her house, hunting for a deck of cards she kept in her roll-top desk. I jiggled the wrong drawer. It was locked, but my tug was just hard enough to dislodge the desk slightly from the wall, and a small, slim key fell from a crevice in the back. A child's logic took over. The key fit. The drawer contained no bills, no jewelry. It was filled with photographs, hundreds of them, neatly sorted in acid-free sleeves. They were all of me. Not birthday parties or Christmas mornings. These were candid shots, taken from a distance. Me walking home from school, my backpack slung over one shoulder. Me shooting hoops alone in our driveway, caught in a moment of frustration. Me sitting on the curb outside the library, waiting for it to open. There were dates and times printed neatly in the corner of each photo. They spanned years. My blood went cold, then hot, with a confusion that felt like shame. This wasn't love. This was surveillance. I heard her key in the front door. With trembling hands, I shoved the photos back, locked the drawer, replaced the key, and slid the desk back. I was on the couch pretending to read a comic when she entered. "There's my guy," she sang, dropping a bag of my favorite gummy bears on the coffee table. Her smile was radiant, genuine. "What have you been up to?" "Nothing," I mumbled, my eyes fixed on the colorful cartoon page I couldn't see. The gummy bears, once a symbol of her perfect understanding, now felt like a bribe, a payment for access. I didn't tell my parents. What would I say? Aunt Celia has a creepy photo collection of me? They'd laugh it off. "That's just Celia. She adores you. She's artistic." I carried the secret like a stone in my pocket, its weight making me fumble, making me quiet. A few weeks later, I had a soccer game. Aunt Celia was there, of course, on the sidelines with her fancy camera. I scored a goal. After the game, sweaty and elated, I ran to my parents. My mom hugged me, my dad ruffled my hair. Aunt Celia approached, camera in hand. "I got the perfect shot of your goal, kiddo, the pure joy on your face." She showed me the display. It was a brilliant close-up action shot, but all I could see was the zoom lens, the distance it implied, the fact that she'd been watching my face that intently from across the field. I pulled back. "Don't," I said, sharper than I intended. Her smile faltered. My mom shot me a look. "Owen, don't be rude. Aunt Celia just wants to celebrate you." But I saw it, a flicker of something in Celia's eyes. Not hurt, annoyance, like I'd disrupted a carefully planned shot. That night, I heard my parents talking in low tones in the kitchen. "He's just at that age," my dad said, pushing away from the women in his life. "Celia's just intense," my mom replied, her voice strained. "But her heart's in the right place. She doesn't have anyone else." I stood in the dark hallway, the stone in my pocket turning to ice. They knew. Maybe not about the locked drawer, but they knew her devotion had a temperature that could burn. And they were making excuses. For her, not for me. My unease was just a phase. Her behavior was a sad, forgivable flaw. The next time I was at her house, I tested a theory. I mentioned, offhand, that I was thinking of trying out for the school play. 2 days later, a book of monologues for teenage boys appeared on my bed at home. My mom said, "Aunt Celia dropped it off. She's so supportive." She hadn't asked if I wanted it. She'd heard a data point and acted on it. The support felt like steering. I started pulling away, making excuses not to go over, keeping my stories vague. Aunt Celia's gifts became more frequent, more pointed. A jacket in the exact style I'd admired on a passing stranger, a rare CD from a band I'd only mentioned once. Her smiles grew tighter, her questions more probing. "You seem distant, Owen. Are we okay?" The pressure built, until at 14, I exploded. It was over something trivial. She'd rearranged my mom's pantry as a surprise, and I'd snapped that she should stop messing with other people's stuff. My mom, furious at my ingratitude, sent me to my room. Aunt Celia came up later. She sat on the edge of my bed. "You know I'm struggling," she said, her voice soft. "Teenage years are hard, but you can talk to me. I see you, Owen, the real you, even when you're hiding." It was the most terrifying thing she had ever said, because it was true. She was watching, and my parents, downstairs, were letting her. The sanctuary had become a panopticon, and the wardens were my mom and dad, telling me the guard loved me too much to look away. The teenage rebellion my parents expected, loud music, questionable friends, slamming doors, morphed into a silent internal secession. I didn't fight with Aunt Celia. I enacted a digital and emotional cordon sanitaire. I locked my social media accounts, gave vague answers about my plans, and cultivated a bland, uninteresting persona around her. The thrill of getting the perfect gift was gone for her. I made myself a puzzle with no solution. My parents were baffled. "Why are you so cold to Celia?" my mom would plead. "She's done nothing but love you." Love doesn't keep files, I'd think, but the words sounded melodramatic even in my head. How could I explain that her love felt like a humidifier, cloying, constant, and leaving a film on everything? The photo drawer was my secret proof, but it felt flimsy as an adult accusation. She'd just say she was documenting my growth, being an enthusiastic aunt. I'd look paranoid, ungrateful. So I played along with the minimum required civility, while building a life as far from her orbit as possible. I found my escape in my friend Leo's family. Their house was gloriously chaotic. His parents didn't remember everyone's favorite everything. They sometimes forgot to buy milk. Their love was a loud, distracted, forgiving warmth. I spent more time there, telling my parents I was studying. They were relieved I was somewhere wholesome. At Leo's, I was just Owen, not Celia's special boy, not a reflection of anyone's loneliness. I was a mediocre bass guitarist in Leo's garage band, a decent student, a guy who told stupid jokes. The anonymity was a balm. Aunt Celia didn't like Leo. "He's a bit unfocused, don't you think?" she'd say. "You need friends who challenge you intellectually." She'd then suggest a brilliant boy from her book club's nephew, offering to arrange a meeting. It was a subtle campaign to curate my world, to reassert her role as the architect of my life. The tension came to a head over college applications. My parents and I had agreed on a list of solid state schools. One evening, Aunt Celia was over for dinner. She turned to me, eyes shining. "I've been researching, Owen. I found the perfect place for you. Evergreen College. It's interdisciplinary, deeply creative. They have a phenomenal photography program." She slid a glossy brochure across the table. It was in another state, tiny, expensive, and utterly wrong for my intended engineering path. My dad chuckled. "That's a sweet thought, Celia, but Owen's got his sights set on bigger campuses." "But he hasn't considered it," she insisted, her voice gaining an edge. "He doesn't know what's out there. I've looked into their housing. I could even visit, help him settle." The image was crystal clear. Her in a new town, decorating my dorm, knowing my class schedule, a fresh canvas for her obsession. My stomach churned. "I'm not interested," I said flatly. The room went quiet. My mom shot me a warning look. "Owen, be polite. Aunt Celia is just trying to help." "I don't need that kind of help," I said, pushing my chair back. "I need you to stop planning my life." Aunt Celia's face crumpled, but it was a performance. I saw the calculation behind the tears. "I just want what's best for you. I see your potential. Sometimes I think I'm the only one who does." That did it. The stone in my pocket finally grew too heavy. "What you see isn't me," I said, my voice trembling with years of suppressed anger. "It's just what you're looking at, through a lens, from a distance." I didn't mention the drawer, but I locked eyes with her, and in that moment, a silent, electric understanding passed between us. I know. Her tears dried instantly, replaced by a cold, shocked stillness. She looked, for the first time, afraid of me. My father stood up. "That's enough. Owen, apologize." But I was done. I walked out, got on my bike, and rode to Leo's. I didn't go home until late, bracing for a lecture. Instead, I found my mom alone in the living room, looking exhausted. "She's heartbroken, Owen." "She's not," I said, surprising myself with my calm. "She's embarrassed I caught her." "Caught her what? Loving you?" "Stalking me." The word hung in the air, ugly and final. My mom's face went pale. "Don't use that word. It's vile. She's your aunt. She's lonely. She invested everything in you." "She didn't invest. She collected," I shot back. "And you let her. You always make excuses. That's just Celia." "Well, what about me? What about what I need, which is for her to back the hell off?" My mom stared at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw not parental dismissal, but a deep, familiar conflict, a lifetime of managing her sister's fragility. "It's complicated, Owen. You don't understand her history." "I don't need to understand her history to know her behavior is wrong, and you covering for her feels wrong too." I went to my room. The confrontation changed nothing outwardly. Aunt Celia still came over, though our interactions were frigidly polite. My parents still gently pressured me to be nicer, but a line had been drawn in the sand. I had named the beast, and in my mother's eyes, I'd seen the terrified recognition that I was no longer a child who could be placated with gummy bears and talk of artistic passion. I was a witness, and witnesses have to be managed too. The family mythology, the narrative of the doting, eccentric aunt and the lucky, loved nephew, was cracking. I was no longer playing my part, and I was starting to realize my parents weren't just audience members, they were co-authors, desperately trying to keep the story from falling apart, even if it meant asking me to ignore the monster they'd written into my role. Leaving for college was my D-Day, a coordinated escape to a campus 500 miles away. I chose a large, anonymous state university, a concrete jungle where I could dissolve into a crowd of 30,000. I gave Aunt Celia a false move-in date. My actual departure was a quiet, pre-dawn affair with just my parents. As we pulled away, I saw a light on in her bungalow window. I couldn't tell if she was watching. The distance was a miracle. For the first time, my body unclenched. I didn't have to scan a room for her, didn't have to vet my interests, my purchases, my friendships for their potential as data points for her collection. I joined the ultimate frisbee team, a sport she'd once called unfocused. I dated a girl with a shaved head and a laugh like a fire alarm, someone Celia would have meticulously critiqued. I was gloriously, boringly free. But the freedom came with a cost, a hyper-vigilance I couldn't switch off. I'd catch myself analyzing a classmate's friendly questions. Is this normal interest or data gathering? I'd hesitate before posting a casual photo online, mentally running a threat assessment. My parents' calls, once a lifeline, now felt like intelligence briefings. Aunt Celia asked how you're liking Sociology 101. She said it sounds fascinating. How did she know my course? My mom, of course. The pipeline was still open. I began to curate two lives, the real one and the sanitized version I fed back through my parents, a bland diet of academic generalities and approved hobbies. I became an unwilling archivist of my own life, carefully editing the record before it could be sent downstream to her. Sophomore year, I got an internship in the city for the summer. I found a sublet and didn't give the address to my parents, citing landlord privacy. It was a flimsy excuse, but it worked. For 3 months, I was truly off-grid. It was heaven. Then, in August, I was walking to a coffee shop near my internship. A familiar figure was sitting at a sidewalk table, sipping an iced tea, wearing large sunglasses. Aunt Celia. My blood turned to slush. The world narrowed to the quiet clink of her spoon against the glass. "Owen," she said, smiling as if we'd planned this. "What a wonderful coincidence." Coincidence. In a city of millions. My sublet was 20 blocks away. My internship was unlisted. "How did you find me?" My voice was flat. "Your mother mentioned the company you were interning with. I was in the city for a gallery opening, and I thought, I wonder which coffee shop near there my favorite nephew frequents. This one had the best reviews." She gestured to the empty chair. "Join me, my treat." It was a masterstroke. Plausible deniability, your mother mentioned, a demonstration of reach, I found your likely habitat, and a reassertion of the old dynamic, my treat. She had breached the perimeter without technically crossing a line. If I made a scene, I was the unstable one. I sat robotically. She didn't ask invasive questions. She talked about the gallery show, about a book she thought I'd like. It was a performance of normalcy, but underneath it thrummed her victory. I can still find you. You are not lost. I told my parents that night, my voice shaking with fury. I stalked me to my coffee shop. "Stalked is a strong word, Owen," my dad said, his tone weary. "She was in the city. She looked you up. She's family." "She hunted me, and you gave her the weapon. You told her where I worked." "We didn't think it was a state secret," my mom retorted defensively. "She's concerned about you living in the city alone. We are too." And there it was again. My legitimate fear was reframed as paranoia. Their complicity was reframed as shared concern. My boundaries were dismissed as secrecy. The family narrative was a black hole, warping all logic into its own gravitational pull. Celia's actions, however unsettling, were born of love. My reactions, however justified, were born of ingratitude. After that, I went fully operational. I tightened my digital security. I asked my friends not to tag me in location-specific posts. I became a ghost in the machine. But the energy it took was draining. I was living a life of defense, and she only had to get lucky once. The real damage was internal. My relationship suffered. How could I explain to a girlfriend why I was so jumpy about her posting a picture of us? How could I articulate that my sweet artistic aunt was the reason I flinched at unexpected gifts? I sounded unhinged. So I stopped trying. I built walls not just against Celia, but against anyone who might get close enough to need an explanation. I graduated, took a job in yet another city, and bought a house with a tall fence. I visited my parents, but I stayed in a hotel. Aunt Celia was always just popping over during my visits. Our interactions were a cold, polite minuet. She'd gift me something useless but deeply personal, a first edition of a book by an author I'd liked in 10th grade. I'd thank her, donate it, and feel dirty. At my grandfather's funeral, I finally cracked. She cornered me by the memorial display, her eyes red raw from performative grief. "He loved you so much, Owen, just like I do. We're the only ones who really see each other, you know, in this family of strangers." The proprietary claim, wrapped in shared loss, was the final straw. "You don't see me," I said, my voice low and venomous in the hushed hall. "You have a dossier. There's a difference. And if you don't stop, I will get a restraining order. I don't care what it does to Mom. I'm done." For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of exposure. The restraining order was a weapon that operated outside the family mythology. It was a public fact. It couldn't be explained away as a misunderstanding. She retreated, physically and then digitally. The likes on my rare social media posts stopped, the gifts ceased. For a year, there was peace. I thought my threat had worked. I'd finally found a language she understood. Consequence. I was wrong. She'd just switched tactics. I'd forced her to stop collecting new data, so she decided to monetize the archive. The welfare check was a turning point. It severed the last, tenuous thread of what if. He wasn't dying alone in a motel room. He was staging a scene, and we'd sent the wrong actors. The silence that followed was different this time. Tense, expectant, like the pause between a lightning strike and the thunder. It broke with a visitor. I was weeding the stubborn patch of garden by the front steps when a rental car pulled up. A woman in her late 40s, dressed in sensible, expensive-looking jeans and a blazer, got out. She had a folder under her arm and the weary but determined expression of someone who handles other people's messes for a living. "Elena Santos?" she asked, her voice polite but not warm. "Yes." "My name is Laura Whitaker. I'm a patient advocate with the Hospice Alliance. May I speak with you for a few minutes?" My stomach dropped. Hospice. He'd upped the ante from hospital charity care to end-of-life care. "Regarding..." "Your uncle, Daniel Santos. He's been admitted to our care program. Part of our protocol involves family liaison, especially in cases of estrangement." She offered a tight, professional smile. "He's listed you and your cousin as next of kin." "He has no right to list us," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "We are estranged, permanently." "I understand there's history," she said, not unkindly. "My role isn't to judge or mediate. It's to ensure Mr. Santos's care plan is followed and that any legal or practical familial obligations are communicated." She opened the folder. "His prognosis is short, weeks, not months. He's refusing certain palliative measures, citing emotional distress. His stated wish is for family reconciliation, or at least presence, before he passes." She was a weapon, a polished professional delivery system for his guilt. I felt a surge of rage so pure it whitened my vision. He was using hospice workers as his flying monkeys. "I'm sorry he's sick," I forced my voice level, "but our position is unchanged. We are not his family, not in any meaningful sense. He forfeited that." Miss Whitaker nodded, as if she'd heard this before. She handed me a business card and a sheet of paper. "This is my contact information, and this is a copy of his advanced directive. You are named as the secondary medical power of attorney after a social worker at the hospital." I stared at the document. My name, typed in an official-looking form. It was a fraudulent, it had to be, but it looked terrifyingly real. "This is fraudulent. I never agreed to this." "He provided it as part of his intake. Our legal team would need to see a formal revocation from you. Until then, technically, if he becomes incapacitated, you could be consulted on care decisions." She let that hang in the air. The implication was clear. He was engineering a scenario where we would be forced to engage, to make decisions, to be responsible. "He's manipulating your entire system," I said, my composure cracking. "Perhaps," she conceded, her professional mask slipping for a second to reveal a flicker of what might have been empathy or shared frustration. "It happens more than you'd think, but the paperwork is what it is. I'm required to make contact. I have." She closed her folder. "My advice, see a lawyer. Get a cease and desist regarding the medical POA. And prepare yourselves. Patients in his condition often become more persistent. The motel call, the social media, it may escalate." She got back in her car and drove away. I stood on the steps, the business card and the advanced directive feeling like live coals in my hand. He wasn't just playing on sentiment anymore. He was using legal-ish frameworks to entangle us. He was building a cage of obligation paper by paper. I showed it all to Mina. She read the directive, her face grim. "He's trying to make us legally complicit, so we can't just ignore him. We have to actively fight him off. It's diabolical." We found a lawyer, paying a retainer that stung our meager savings. Ms. Geller was a no-nonsense woman who specialized in elder law and family dysfunction. She examined the documents. "The POA is almost certainly invalid. You never signed it. But to be safe, we'll file a notarized affidavit revoking any and all authority and disclaiming any fiduciary responsibility. We'll send it to the hospice, the hospital, and put it on record with the county." "It feels like we're preparing for war," Mina said quietly. "We are," Miss Geller replied, "a bureaucratic one. He's trying to force a connection. Your only move is to formally, legally, and repeatedly sever it. Every time he tries to tie a knot, you cut the rope." We did the paperwork. We sent the letters. It felt defensive, draining. The escalation came not to us, but through us. A week later, I got a call from Mina's school counselor. "Elena, we have Mina in the office. She's very upset. A man came to the front gate during lunch asking for her. He said he was her dying uncle and he just wanted to see her face one more time. Security turned him away, but there was a scene. He was crying. Some of the other students saw." My blood turned to ice. He'd gone to her school. He'd violated that sanctuary. When I picked her up, she was trembling, not with fear, but with a volcanic silent fury. He wanted an audience, she spat. He wanted my friends to see, to pressure me, to make me the bitch who rejected her dying uncle at the school gate. That was the line, the final unforgivable line. The manipulation was one thing. Invading her school, weaponizing her peers' perception, that was an act of psychological warfare. It was time to go on the offensive, not with emotion, but with fact. Mina, I said that evening, we need to tell our story. Not on Facebook, not for sympathy, but to take away his power. He's controlling the narrative. We need to own it. She was hesitant. Our private pain is already public. He's made it a spectator sport. Right now, he's the tragic figure. We need to be the prosecutors. We didn't post anything. Instead, I contacted the hospice advocate, Laura Whitaker. I requested a conference call with her and the hospice's head of social work. With Ms. Geller, our lawyer, silently listening in on the line, I laid it out, calmly, clearly, without hysterics. I described the fraud against an 11-year-old. I read the collection agency letters we'd kept. I described the postcards, the faked motel crisis, the social media smear campaign. And then I told them about the school. He is using your hospice program and his terminal diagnosis not to find peace, but to continue a lifelong pattern of exploitation and abuse against his victims, who happen to be his only living relatives. His goal is not reconciliation, it is control. And by facilitating his attempts to force contact, even with good intentions, you are being weaponized against us. The silence on the other end was profound. Then the head of social work spoke, her voice stiff with shock and dawning horror. We were not aware of this history. The patient presented a narrative of simple estrangement, of regret. His regret, Mina's voice cut in, clear and cold over the speakerphone, is that he got caught and ran out of money. Now he's sick, and he's found a new way to get what he wants. Please, do not help him hurt us anymore. The call ended with profuse, if belated, apologies from the hospice. They assured us Daniel would be removed from any outreach program that involved family liaison, and his listed next of kin would be officially scrubbed. They would handle his care, but they would no longer be his conduit to us. It was a victory, but a hollow one. We had to lay our trauma bare for strangers, just to get them to stop helping him harass us. The unmasking was complete. The kind, dying uncle was gone, revealed to the professionals in his life as the manipulator he was. We had scorched the earth between us and any system he might use. We had won the bureaucratic battle, but we both knew, with a chilling certainty, that Daniel didn't end games he was losing. He simply changed the rules, and now he had nothing left to lose. The signed agreement was a tombstone. It buried Aunt Celia's public project and erected a legal wall between us. The family group chat, once a sporadic stream of mundane updates, went permanently dark. My mother's calls became infrequent and strained, conversations orbiting the safe, distant planets of weather and home maintenance. My father, after his visit, seemed shrunken, his calls brief and freighted with an unspoken apology that never quite found words. I had won my war, and in doing so, I had made my family a silent, frozen place. For a year, I lived in the quiet. It was a relief, but it was the relief of a ceasefire, not a peace treaty. The hypervigilance softened, but didn't disappear. I'd still catch myself analyzing a coworker's friendly curiosity, or feeling a spike of anxiety when a partner wanted to take my picture. The damage was in the wiring, and no legal document could resolder it. Then my mother called. Her voice was flat, stripped of its usual anxious energy. Celia's in the hospital. Pneumonia. It's not good. They think it's complicated by other things. A systemic failure. She didn't say the word cancer, but it hung in the static between us. She's asking for you. The old scripts flashed before my eyes. The manipulation, the guilt, the performance. No. Owen, she's dying. And? The word was cruel, but it was the distilled truth of 20 years of violation. Her dying doesn't undo what she did. It doesn't suddenly make her entitled to an audience. My mother began to cry. Soft, defeated sobs. I can't do this alone. I can't sit with her and know that my son, that I, failed you both. That last part, the ragged admission, was new. It wasn't a plea for Celia, it was a confession. You didn't fail her, Mom. You enabled her. You failed me. I let the statement sit. I'm not coming, but I'll call the hospital social worker. They can arrange support for you. I hung up and did exactly that. I was cool, efficient, and utterly detached. I was managing a logistical problem, not a family tragedy. Aunt Celia died 3 days later. I didn't go to the funeral. My parents didn't ask me to. They went, two small, aged figures sitting alone in a pew, mourning not just a sister, but the catastrophic family myth they had spent a lifetime maintaining. A month after the funeral, a parcel arrived. Thick, stiff, the size of a large photo album. The return address was my parents' lawyer. My heart hammered a dull, familiar rhythm of dread. Inside, there was no note from my parents, just a single, sealed archival box and a key taped to the lid. The key was for a high-security storage facility in the city where I now lived. The unit was in my name, paid for 5 years in advance. With a sinking feeling, I knew what was inside the box on my table. I didn't open it. I took the key. The storage unit was cold and smelled of concrete and dust. Inside, stacked neatly, were dozens of identical gray archival boxes. And leaning against them, a single piece of art, professionally framed. It was the contact sheet from her Proximity series, a grid of every shot, tiny and chronological. Across the bottom, in her elegant script, she had written, "The negative space is also part of the picture." I opened the first box. It was the photos from the locked drawer, now properly archived. The next held negatives. Another held digital hard drives, meticulously labeled by year. Another contained the gifts, the monologue book, the jacket, the CDs, each in its own protective sleeve. She hadn't just collected moments, she'd curated the entire ecosystem of her obsession. This was the master archive, and she had left it to me. It wasn't a peace offering. It was the final, breathtaking act of possession. She was making me the custodian of my own surveillance. The ultimate power move. You wanted it stopped, but you cannot make it disappear. Here it is. All of it. You deal with it. I stood in the humming silence of the unit, surrounded by the physical proof of my stolen childhood. The weight of it was suffocating. I could burn it, shred it, dump the drives in a river, but that would be an act of passion, of fear. It would mean she was still dictating my actions. I closed the unit and locked it. I didn't destroy it. I didn't take it home. I left it there, in the cold, impersonal dark. I would keep paying for the unit. I would let it sit. Because she was wrong. The negative space, the parts of my life she hadn't captured, the love that wasn't obsessive, the trust that wasn't forced, the person I became outside her lens, that was the real picture. Her archive was just the void she tried to fill with my image. It was her emptiness, not my fullness. I called my mother, not to talk about Celia, but to talk about the weather and to tell her, awkwardly, about a promotion at work. She cried, but this time it was different. They were tears for the simple, fragile bridge we were trying to build over the canyon Celia had carved. I started therapy, not to get over it, but to learn how to live beside the scar. I began tentatively to let people in, to explain in plain language, I have a history with boundary violations. I might be weird about X. Please be patient. Most people were. The storage unit key sits in a drawer in my desk. I don't look at it. It's not a ghost. It's a fact. A locked room containing a locked drawer containing a stolen childhood. I own the lock now. That has to be enough. Sometimes the fear rises. Sometimes I see a camera and my breath catches. But now I see it for what it is, a reflex, a learned flinch. It's not the present. The present is my life, built in the negative space she could never touch. It's messy, and it's guarded, and it's mine. Aunt Celia spent a lifetime trying to develop the perfect picture of the boy she wanted. In the end, the only picture that mattered was the one I developed alone, in the darkroom of my own survival. A man standing in the light, with the key to the darkness in his drawer, and the absolute, quiet certainty he never has to use it.